The day I took back the lake. The day I became the most hated man in Silver Pines Ridge was the same day I became its most powerful. $500, that's what Delia Camden and her homeowners association fined me for fishing with my grieving daughter. What they didn't know was that I had 4 million reasons to fight back, and enough bitterness to spend every last one. Just 2 months ago, I was living what most would call the American dream. My name's Ellis Granger, and I'd spent 15 years in venture capital, climbing my way into high-stakes investments and emerging tech startups until I cashed out at 42 with more money than I could ever spend. But the kind of wealth that buys penthouses doesn't protect you from real loss. Last winter, my wife June passed away after a brutal fight with pancreatic cancer. Her absence hollowed me. It left our 14-year-old daughter, Maddie, raw and withdrawn. She stopped talking to her friends, stopped sketching in her notebooks until one day I asked if she wanted to go fishing. The last thing the three of us had done together before the chemo and the 4 bags and the quiet goodbye in a sterile hospital room. She said yes. We sat on a dock just off a small pond near our rental, barely speaking. But when she caught a little bluegill and giggled like she hadn't in months, I knew what I had to do. Start over. Somewhere quieter. Somewhere with water and memory and room to heal. That's how I ended up buying the Craftsman on Willowbark Drive in Silver Pines Ridge. A peaceful development wrapped around a 6-acre lake with winding sidewalks, scenic views, and carefully manicured homes. The realtor mentioned there was a homeowners association, but it seemed harmless trash schedules, lawn height, exterior paint palettes. She paused just slightly before adding, the HOA president, MS. Camden is very passionate about preserving the neighborhood's character. I didn't think much of it. I'd negotiated with billionaires, charmed boardrooms, and held my ground through public IPOs. How bad could one overly enthusiastic neighborhood rep be? I found out on a Saturday morning in April. Maddie and I had been fishing for about an hour. She had just reeled in her second catch, gently working the hook loose, when a clipped, irritated voice cut through the birdsong. "Excuse me, but what exactly do you think you're doing?" The woman marching toward us looked like she'd just stepped out of a catalog for aggressive Pilates moms. Blonde bob, perfectly ironed tracksuit, and a tablet clutched like a court summons. Her expression suggested she thought we were squatting on private land. "Good morning," I offered, standing up. "Just fishing with my daughter. I'm Ellis Granger, who moved into the Willowbark place 2 months ago." She ignored my hand. "Mr. Granger, fishing is strictly prohibited in Silver Pines Ridge's community lake. You're in direct violation of HOA regulations." She turned the tablet toward me. "As president of the HOA, I'll need to issue you a formal violation. The fine is $500. Maddie stiffened beside me. I kept my voice level. There must be some mistake. Fishing was part of why we bought here. The realtor said it was one of the community amenities. Delia smiled without warmth. The rule changed last month. All residents were notified via email. Ignorance doesn't excuse a violation. She tapped a document dated 4 weeks ago. Amendment to recreational use of community lake. I clenched my jaw. "We didn't get that email." "I personally manage communications," she replied curtly. "Perhaps you should check your spam folder." I took a slow breath. "May I ask why fishing was banned?" "The lake clearly has a healthy fish population." She sniffed at our tackle box. "Environmental impact and odor. The bait attracts pests. Some residents find it unpleasant while enjoying lake views during their morning espresso. So it was about optics, not ecology." I said, "We always catch and release. We clean up after ourselves." "This isn't a public park," she snapped. "Silver Pines Ridge maintains certain standards, and new residents sometimes have difficulty adjusting." I heard the subtext loud and clear: new money, new problems. Her glance at Maddie made me see red. "We'll pack up," I said, wrapping an arm around my daughter. "Please email me the fine and the regulation update." Her smile returned, victorious. "Excellent. And do try to stay more informed in the future." As we walked home, Maddie wiped at her cheeks. "Why was that lady so mean?" "Some people love power more than people," I told her. Later that night, I searched every inbox, spam folder, and community site. Nothing about a fishing ban. What I did find was a history. Camden had been HOA president for 8 straight years. She also owned Camden Properties, a boutique real estate firm known for flipping problem homes in luxury communities. I also found photos. Camden's public social media showed lakefront parties, full of booze, blaring music, and catered trays all held on the same dock where she'd find me. So fishing was disruptive, but 3-drink brunches with floating speakers were fine. The next morning, I met Merrick Howell, a retired attorney, walking his beagle down my block. When I mentioned Camden, he sighed. "She got you, huh? Let me guess, some obscure fine and an air of royalty." He invited me over for coffee and shared a manila folder full of legal records. The lake's not owned by the HOA. It belongs to the original developer Clearwell Ventures. The HOA leases recreational rights, but that lease expires in less than 2 months. I leaned forward. What happens then? Clearwell can sell, renew, or do nothing. But here's the kicker, Merrick said. Camden's been in private talks with Thimto by the lake herself, through one of her shell companies. Why? To build, Merrick said, condos, exclusive lake homes. This fishing ban? She's limiting access to reduce liability and prep for acquisition. Merrick introduced me to Samuel DeWitt, a retired banker who'd long suspected Camden's real estate interests were behind her HOA policy. Samuel had compiled a spreadsheet spanning 10 years of HOA violations and property sales. 3-to-1 ratio, he said. Minority homeowners cited 3 times more often. New residents pushed out faster. And when they sell, guess who buys low and sells high? Camden's pattern was clear. Fine. Isolate. Acquire. Flip. I knew what I had to do. I met Robert Leung, a real estate insider with ties to Clearwell Ventures. He confirmed that Camden had entered exclusive negotiations to buy the lake for $300,000. But Clearwell was desperate. The pandemic had torched their commercial portfolio. If someone showed up with more cash and no financing delays, they'd listen. I offered $350,000 cash closing in 7 days. No contingencies. Clearwell agreed. To keep things quiet, I created a holding company, Willowgate Holdings, LLC. The deed wouldn't mention my name. While Camden strutted through the neighborhood announcing lake revitalization, plans, new fees, new rules, new prestige, I quietly collected every document I needed. Meanwhile, her tactics escalated. Suddenly, I was getting fined for mailbox paint, weed height, even Maddie's bike left in the driveway. Camden's informants watched us like hawks. My coalition grew. Samuel, Merrick, Maria Gonzalez, Saffir Duskland, and more. Residents harassed for Christmas lights, lawn chairs, wind chimes. We held private meetings, shared records, compared violations. We weren't rebels. We were survivors. Then came a final push. Camden scheduled a party by the lake, exclusive to original homeowners. Loud music, catered lunch, wine, smug laughter. She had no idea that I now owned the lake. I arrived mid-afternoon with Merrick, Samuel, my attorney, and Officer Denise Rourke, who'd been briefed on the situation. As Camden toasted her lake, I stepped to the microphone. "Good afternoon," I said, smiling. "Lovely event. Unfortunately, it's taking place on private property." Gasps. Camden froze. "This is a private community event. You weren't invited." I held up the deed. "I own this lake now, and the 10-foot perimeter around it. As of 3 days ago, the lease agreement with the HOA is void. This event is trespassing." Rourke stepped forward. "You have 15 minutes to vacate the property." Camden's jaw dropped. "You can't do this." I just did. The party collapsed like a deflated bounce house. Guests gathered their wine glasses and drifted away. Several stopped to shake my hand. "About time someone took her down," one man muttered. The next day, I posted signs, "Private property, no trespassing," and made the announcement official. Rachel's Lake, named after my late wife, would become a conservation site for education and public wellness. Fishing would be allowed, but only for families not represented on the current HOA board. Petty? Maybe. Effective? Absolutely. When Camden tried to smear me in local media, I released professional water quality tests showing the HOA's neglect had led to algae overgrowth and pollution. Then came the footage security cameras catching Camden at midnight pouring something into the lake. She was arrested for trespassing and attempted environmental contamination. More secrets unraveled. She'd misused HOA funds, threatened residents and assails, and offered bribes to Merrick, who, being an ethics lawyer, had recorded every word. Facing lawsuits, criminal charges, and financial ruin, she resigned. The community voted to dissolve the current HOA leadership. Safra was elected president. Regulations were reformed. Term limits enacted. An ethics committee established. At a neighborhood meeting, I made my final move. I've also acquired 23 mortgage notes in Silver Pines Ridge, I announced, including MS. Camden's. I don't intend to foreclose, but I will refinance any homeowner willing to commit to a new, ethical HOA structure. The crowd erupted in applause. 3 months later, Maddie and I hosted a community fishing day at Rachel's Lake. Nearly every family showed up. Kids laughed. Parents bonded. No finis. No fear. Just peace. Mom would be proud of you, Maddie whispered, leaning into my shoulder as the sun dipped behind the trees. I think she'd be proud of both of us, I said, my eyes stinging. 1 year later, Silver Pines Ridge became a case study in HOA reform. Other neighborhoods adopted our structure. Camden disappeared into obscurity, and Rachel's Lake remained a symbol not of vengeance, but of quiet justice. Because sometimes the best way to fight power isn't louder. It's smarter, slower, legal, patient, and unstoppable.